Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, Math Made Easy with Terry in 10 minutes. So we're going to be talking about how do we sketch quadratic graphs. In the previous video, I talked about how do you sketch a linear graph, okay? So it's very important and key here that you review the previous videos, especially on x-intercept, y-intercept, and how to find vertex, because I'm going to use those concepts here to sketch a quadratic graph. Okay, so if you've not subscribed, I don't know what you're waiting for. Do subscribe so you can get these great videos, more of it. And immediately I upload a video, you'll be the first person to know. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is just to remind us that the general form of a quadratic equation graph, remember we talked about it before, is ax squared plus bx plus c, all right? We talked about this severally, that this is that. So, but sketching a graph, okay, sketching a quadratic graph, like I said in the linear equation, is different from plotting, all right? So these are two different things. So when you're sketching is different from plotting. Now, when you sketch a graph, what you're trying to do is that you're trying to show the key points, all right? The key points and the general shape of the graph. Now, and also it's not expected that this graph has to be accurate as plotting a graph from a table of values. So that means you can't compare the accuracy of a sketch with when you plot it from a table of values, all right? Like I always say, I'm aware that some students make notes from this, so I'm gonna write this down so that when you're making notes, it'll be easier for you, okay? So the first thing is that I just said is that a sketch, okay? A sketch of a graph shows the key points, okay? So when I say the key point, like I explained in the previous video, the key points only refers to the main features or the most important information in the graph, okay? And also gives you the general shape. So it also tells you the general shape of the graph. Okay, the general shape. And also, I also said the level of accuracy while sketching cannot be compared to that of plotting, okay? So it is not expected to be accurate, okay, as plotting a graph from a table of values. So it's not expected that the answer you should get, all right, should be the same thing. And like I told you, the sketch is just giving you an estimate of the solutions, okay? It's giving you the key point, the general shape. But also, a sketch is very important for solving some topics like quadratic inequalities, okay? So sketch is important in solving some questions or some topics like quadratic inequality. Okay, so I'm going to talk about quadratic inequalities very soon. I'm going to talk about this when I'm done talking about quadratic simultaneous equations. So this is one of the topics I'm going to talk about. And also it will be very important you understand how to sketch, because when we get to quadratic inequalities, we're going to use the same concept. We're going to apply that and now see where the area of solutions and the rest of it, okay? So that is that. That'll be later. All right, let's focus on what we have today. Sketching of a quadratic graph is very simple. Now, as the same thing with the linear graph, I told you that when you're sketching a graph, a linear graph, for instance, let's assume we have this. So this is how you sketch a graph with a smooth line, all right? You don't sketch a graph by doing something like this. No, please, please, please. This is not art, okay? You just sketch it. So it's gonna be a one smooth line curve, all right? It's gonna be one smooth line curve. joining the key features or the key point, all right? And also that you also know that a quadratic function, sometimes we refer to it as a parabola. So sometimes you might be checking some textbook and they'll be referring to it as a parabola. It's exactly the same thing, all right? Good. So key points, sketching helps you with key points, the general shape, and it's not as accurate as the what? The table, plotting one from a table of values. And this is very important when we're solving questions like quadratic what? Inequalities. And when you're drawing, you draw with a smooth line. So you just be one smooth line, all right? But one smooth line, not you're not having dashed line or something, all right? You're not having like drawing an art, okay? It has to be very smooth. Now, there are 5 key points, all right? There are 5 key points that you need before you draw or you sketch a graph. So there are 5 key points needed to sketch, okay? Get this out of the way. To sketch, okay? So there are 5 things you need. Before you sketch, always remember the 5 things, just like your 5 fingers, all right? There are 5 things you need. The first thing you need is to know the shape, predict the shape of the graph. Okay, you need to know what the shape of the graph will look like. Okay, then after you predicted the shape, the second thing you need to predict is the size of the graph. So you've predicted the shape. The next thing you then have to predict is the size, okay, or the size of the graph, or we can say the size of the parabola. All right, so remember I told you it's still the same thing. Then number 3, we've discussed the third one before. It's called the x-intercept. All right. So the x-intercept. Remember I told you x-intercept is another name for the roots. Okay. It's another name for solution. And I've discussed how to find the x-intercept in the previous video, or how to solve quadratic equation. I said we have 3 methods. We have the formula method. We have the completing the square method. And also we have the factorization. Under factorization, I told you we have common squares. Difference of 2 squares. We have common factors. We have trinomial that a is equal to 1. Trinomial that a is not equal to 1. All right, I will talk about all this. So please, you have to go back and review the solutions of a quadratic equation. Just go to the playlist and you'll see we've talked about all these methods already. Now, when you're done with that, you need to now look for the y-intercept. Okay, so we talked about x-intercept. We talked about the y-intercept. At y-intercept, I told you in the previous videos as well. I have a video on x and y-intercept. So I showed that x-intercept, y-intercept, x is equal to 0, and at x-intercept, y is equal to what? 0. So we've solved all this before. Then number 5, which was in the previous video, I also explained vertex, okay? So you need to know the vertex, okay? All right. So we've talked about these 5 things. And also, one of the things I also want you to know is that the vertex is never pointy, all right? I'm going to explain that very soon. So it's never pointy. So when you have a vertex and you're drawing a graph, you should not draw the vertex like this, okay? It's not like that. A graph is like a smooth curve. Are you seeing it? This. So this is what we call the vertex. And I've shown you how to calculate the vertex. I showed you how to calculate it either using the formula or using the completing the square method, all right? So now, this is a vertex, so we're going to calculate how to find it. We found it already, but how to sketch it. But when you're sketching it, it's never pointy. It has to be like a smooth curve. The same thing, if it's going to be this way, you don't draw a graph like that. You draw it like this. It's going to be something smooth, a smooth parabola. Is that right? So this is some things you need to keep in mind. So 5 things: the shape of the graph, the size of the graph, the x-intercept or the roots or the solutions, all right? The y-intercept and the vertex, all right? Now, let's go to the 6th rule. So how do you now solve this graph? Now, there are 6 rules for this. The first thing, remember, we said the first thing is to find the shape, right? So we have to identify. So we have to identify the coefficient of x. of x squared, I beg your pardon. So that is, or a. So remember I told you that a quadratic equation is written in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. Now, the number in front of x squared will determine the shape of the graph. So you have to find the value for a. What is the value for a in that question? Now, the value for a will now determine, or the coefficient of x squared, which is called the quadratic coefficient, the value of a will now determine the shape of the graph. Now, if, for instance, in the question, the a is greater than 0, so it means that it's going to be a U shape. So the graph is going to be U-shaped. If you solve it, and a is less than 0, that means it's going to be a what? An N shape. Okay, so remember, a can never be 0. Remember, we talked about it in the quadratic equation. Is either greater than 0 or less than 0. Now, if it's greater than 0, basically it's positive, it's U-shape. If it's negative, it's N-shape. So basically, we mean positive, all right? It's U-shape, and if it's negative, it's going to be N-shaped. So remember, we've gotten the first one. The first thing you need to do is to find the shape of the graph. Number 2, you need to find the size of the parabola. Okay? The size of the parabola. So I told you here, the size of the parabola is the second thing to talk about. Now, how do you determine the size of the parabola? So the graph is going to be bigger, all right, if the absolute value of a is equal if the graph is going to be thinner if the absolute value of a is bigger. Is that okay? So the graph is going to be thinner. So that means you're going to have the graph looking like this. All right? It's going to be very thin. It's going to look like this. But if the absolute value of a is smaller, all right? If the absolute value of a is smaller, then the graph is going to be wider. All right? So it's going to look like this. Like this. All right? That is it. So the size of the parabola, so if the absolute value of a is bigger, it's going to be thinner. If it's smaller, it's going to be what? It's going to be wider. All right? So you have to keep in mind, the first thing, we find the coefficient of x squared. Then the next part is that we then have to find the size of the parabola. All right. So the third one now is that we're going to what? We're going to find the x-intercept. So remember we said the first thing is the size. The second is the first thing is the shape. The second is the size. And the third is going to be the x-intercept. So now we're going to find the x-intercept. Okay. So you find the x-intercept. Or the roots. Okay. X-intercept or root. So like I said, for the x-intercept, you have to then set the y to be equal to 0. So that means you then solve appropriately. So you're going to solve it as usual, all right? And I told you that for this, there are 3 ways of doing that. I've discussed it in the previous video. You can either use the formula method, depending, okay? If you want to use the formula method, I've talked about it. There are 3 ways. You can either use the formula method, you can use the completing the square method, okay? Or you can also use what? Factorization. And under factorization, I talked about that we have the common factors. You can use common factors depending on the question you have. You can use the difference of 2 squares. Okay. You can use trinomials when a is equal to 1. And you can also use trinomials when a is not equal to 1. So I've discussed all this in the previous video, all right? So just go back and review this. So that is why you need to understand how to solve quadratic equation. Then after that, you have to go to number 4. So we've talked about the shape, the size, the x-intercept. Now you find the what? The y-intercept. So you have to now find the y-intercept. That is step 4. So in the y-intercept, as usual, you will set x to be equal to 0, and you solve appropriately. Or you solve as usual, all right? So I already have a video where we talked about the x and the y-intercept, so please go back and have a look at that. So number 5, after we're done with that, the next thing, we've done the y-intercept, you need to find the what? The vertex. I remember I said the vertex is never pointy, all right? So you then have to find the vertex. All right, so I told you the vertex is never what? Pointy. Okay, so the vertex, I showed you there are 2 ways. You can either use the formula method. All right, so if you remember the formula method, I told you is minus b over 2a and the function of minus b over 2a. We talked about this in the previous video, all right, to get a vertex. Or you can decide to use the complete the square method. It will still give you the same thing, all right? So you can use any of them to sketch your graph, all right? Then when you're done with all this, you found the 5, you've identified the shape, the size, okay? So this is for the shape, right? So this helped you with the shape, okay? You found the shape, you found the size, you found the x-intercept, the y-intercept, the vertex, and number 6 now, you can now what? Sketch the graph, okay? So you can see the sketching of the graph is built on so many concepts discussed as well in the previous videos, all right? So that's the reason why I started from the scratch, building it up slowly till we got to this point. So it's very important that you follow me as well. Watch each of the videos, practice as well, practice questions, then come back and you keep going. All right, let's pick an example, for instance. So let's pick one example. All right. So we have, let's say we are told to sketch this quadratic equation. So we're given a quadratic equation and we're now told to sketch it. Okay, so we have y is equal to x squared plus 6x plus 5. All right, we're given this now, all right, and we're told to sketch it. So we already know from the previous videos, the a for this is equal to 1, the b is equal to 6, and the c is equal to what? 5. Now let's sketch this. Step 1. What's the first thing to do? The the rule said we need to find the shape. Now, if a is greater than 0, it's going to be u. A less than 0 is going to be n. So let us go back. What's our a? Our a is 1. Our a is 1, so that therefore a is greater than 0. And because a is greater than 0, what would that be? It will be U-shaped. So that means the graph we're going to draw is going to look like this. Good? Now step 2. The next thing that we're going to talk about is the size of the parabola. If it's bigger, it's thinner. If it's smaller, it's wider. So let's go. I'm going to talk more about the size when we talk about transformation of graph very soon. Okay, we're going to talk about so many things very soon. But when we get there, you will see that. Well, let's just, for the sake of the sketching, I'm going to just do it as well. So we're going to do the size of the parabola. So that means we have absolute value of A, okay, which is absolute value of 1, and that is equal to 1. So 1 technically is smaller, all right? And because it's smaller, it's going to be a bit wider, all right? So when you're going to see the graph is going to be U, but it's going to be wider. So we've done that already. Step 3. Now, step 3, we need to then find what? The roots or the y-intercept, okay? So we have to set y equals to 0 and solve. So we're going to go back. We're going to set y to be equal to 0. So that means we have y is equal to x squared plus 6x plus 5. All right. Y is equal to 0. So this is going to be 0. It's going to be equal to x squared plus 6x plus 5. So therefore, x squared plus 6x plus 5 is equal to what? 0. Now you can see it's a quadratic equation. And how do you solve it? So you remember, we have different ways of solving this. You can either use formula method, completing the square method, factorization method. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to use factorization method. Is that okay? And I'm going to use the trinomials when a is equal to 1, because you can see in this example, my a is equal to 1. So I'm going to use the trinomials, the method when a is equal to 1. So go to the back to the previous video. You will see where we have, go to the playlist and you'll see one of the videos where we talked about trinomials is equal to 1, when a is equal to 1, and try as much as possible to solve that. So let's go back. So I'm going to do factorization method. So I'm going to look for two numbers that I'm going to multiply. That will give me 5, and I'll add them, and that will give me 6. And those numbers is 5 and 1. 5 times 1 will give me what? Let me write this better. So 5 and 1. 5 times 1 will give me the 5. 5 plus 1 will give me what? The 6. So I can now put this as x plus 5, x plus 1. All right? Then this is equal to 0. Then it has to then be x plus 5 is equal to 0. X plus 1 is equal to 0. So therefore, x will be equal to minus 5, and x will be equal to minus 1. But remember, I told you the way you write x-intercept, at x-intercept, y is equal to what? 0. So x-intercept, we write it as x comma what? 0. So that means the answer we have here, we're going to write it as what? Minus 5 comma 0 and minus 1 comma what? 0. Are you seeing that? Then the next part now, we'll now go to the next one, which is step 4. Step 4 is that we need to then find, I believe, the y-intercept. Yes, find the y-intercept. So let's go. Let's find the y-intercept. At y-intercept, what happens? X is equal to 0. So that means at y-intercept, x is equal to 0. So that means anywhere you see x, you're going to put what? 0. So that means it's going to be y is equal to 0 squared plus 6, 0 plus 5. So therefore, y will be equal to what? 5. But like I said, for y-intercept, you write it as 0 comma y. Remember, we talked about this earlier. So you can also add this to the rules for the y-intercept, okay? 0 comma y, okay? For the x-intercept is x comma 0. So it will help you not to forget. So we're going to write this now as what? 0 comma what? 5. And that'll be the answer for that. So we're done with step 4. The next part now is step 5, the vertex. All right? Now, the vertex, we have two ways of solving the vertex. It's either the formula method or the completing the square method. In this video, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to use the complete the square method, right? You can also use the vertex method. You'll get exactly the same thing, but I'm going to use the complete the square method because I would prefer to use this method so that it will be like a form of revision. So we're going to look at the complete the square method. So step 5, we're going to find the vertex, okay? And we have x squared plus 6x plus 5. Now we're going to use the complete the square method when a is equal to 1. So remember, complete the square, I gave you, we have the formula method. We have when a is equal to 1, when a is not equal to 1. So you can also write it here if you want that. It could help you. So you have 3 of them. You have the formula method. Okay. We have, you can solve this when a is equal to 1 and when a is not equal to 1. So I have videos for each of these ones, all right? So you can go back and have a look at them. So, but because a is equal to 1, I'm going to use the method here. So you open a bracket. I told you, you put x, you put 2. The sign you have here, you write it down here. 6 divided by 2 will give you 3 minus 3 squared plus 5. Is that okay? And that will give you x plus 3 squared minus 9 plus 5. Minus 9 plus 5 will give you minus 4. So the x plus 3 squared minus 4. And this is the vertex form. Okay? So remember in the vertex, I told you that the x is equal to, you swap the sign for this, and that will give you minus 3. And the y is equal to what? Minus 4. So we can write the vertex to be minus 3 and minus 4. Okay. So we've gotten the points we need. Okay, so we have a vertex, which is minus 3, minus 4. Are you seeing it? Then we have the x-intercept, which is minus 5 and 0. And the x-intercept is minus 1 and 0. And also we have the y-intercept, which is 0 and what? 5. So let's plot this graph now. Okay, so I'm going to use this place to do it. So we have this. So this is my y-axis, and this is my what? X-axis. All right, let's go. Let's start the first one. The first one, we know it's going to look like a U. All right, so we're expecting the graph to look like this. We have minus 5 and 0. Okay, so let's say minus 5 and 0. So let me put it. So for this, I'm going to just put some little scales here. So just to help with those that are writing, so that to just give them a little bit of understanding. But later, when I'm going to sketch, I'm not going to be writing the scales here. Is that okay? I'm just writing it here just to help. Is that all right? So minus 5 and 0. So that means the x-intercept. Let me bring them all here. So the x-intercept we have is minus 5 and 0, and we also have minus 1 and 0. We have minus 1 and 0. Then the y-intercept. So the y-intercept, we have 0 and y-intercept. We have 0 and 5. So we have 0 and 5. Then also the vertex, we have minus 3, minus 4. So the vertex is minus 3, minus 4. All right. Then for the y, so let me just put this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And also I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you don't need to write the scale, but of course it's the first time I'm teaching this here in this series. That's the reason why I'm just doing this. So x-intercept is minus 5 and 0. So that means minus 5 and 0 is going to be here. Are you seeing it? The next one, minus 1 and 0, x-intercept, minus 1 and 0. Y-intercept is 0 and 5. 0 and 5. Okay. 0 and 5. Okay. Then the x-intercept is minus 3 and minus 4. So this is the minus axis, minus 3 and minus 4. So somewhere here. Then, as you can see, the shape of the graph has to be U, right? So when you come to join this line together, so like I said, you don't do like this. Nope. Okay. It has to be a smooth line, and you don't do like this. It cannot be what? Pointed. So that means when you want to draw this, you try as much as possible, make it a smooth curve as you can. So you're just going to be one smooth curve going all the way down, right? Turning at this point, going all the way up, and touching all the points you want it to. Are you seeing it? So you can see that the point here is what? Y that's expected, because the absolute value is what? Greater than that. And that will be the answer for that. Okay? So that means you need the 5 things to plot a graph. So you need to know the size, the shape, the x-intercept, the y-intercept, and the vertex. So always remember your 5 fingers are the most important things, or the 5 points to draw the graph. Okay, so let's pick one more example. All right, let's assume we're told to sketch this graph here. Let's pick one more example to sketch this graph. So we're told to sketch this quadratic equation. We have minus x squared plus 2x plus 3, okay? Minus x squared plus 2x plus 3. As you know, the a is equal to minus 1, the b is equal to 2, and the c is equal to 3. So we'll start now, step 1. So step 1, what did it say? You have to identify the quotient of x squared. If it's greater than 0 is u, less than 0 is n. All right, so let's go back. Then we have our a to be equal to minus 1, and that means a is less than 0. And because it's less than 0 is negative, it means that the graph should look like this. It's going to be n shape. Step 2, we need to know the size, okay? So the absolute value, if it's bigger, it's thinner, and if it's smaller, it's wider. All right, so let's do that. So the absolute value of a is equals to absolute value of minus 1. When it's absolute, it means that you have to remove the negative sign. All right, so absolute value is equal to 1, and because it's that, it's going to be wider. All right, so that means we'll be expecting the graph to look like this. Step 3. Step 3 now asks us to what? Find the x-intercept or the root. So that means you set y to be equal to 0. So that means we have y is equal to minus x squared plus 2x plus 3. We put y equals to 0, and that'll give you minus x squared plus 2x plus 3. Okay, so there are 2 ways to do this. You either take all this to the other side, okay? So that means to now become x squared minus 2x minus 3, and you solve it as if you have a is equal to 1, the method, or you leave it here and you have minus x squared plus 2x plus 3. But in this case, you're going to solve it when a is not equal to 1. Is that right? So that means what I'm trying to say, if you take this to the other side, you're going to have x squared minus 2x minus 3 equal to 0, if you do it like that. So that means if you take all this to the other side, then you can now solve it using the maybe the factorization method or any method when a is equal to 1. But if you leave it in this form here, minus x squared plus 2x plus 3, because a is not equal to 1, then you have to what? Use the trinomial when a is not equal to 1. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this method here. I'm going to use the minus here so that to just review when a is not equal to 1. Okay, so let's go. So we're going to we have minus x squared minus 2x minus 3. So you look for 2 numbers that you multiply, that is going to give you minus 3. And when you add it, it's going to give you plus 2. So you're going to have 2 numbers that you add that will give you minus 3, and you add that will give you plus 3. And that will be 3 and minus 1. 3 times minus 1 will give you minus 3. 3 plus minus 1 will give you 2. So please, if you've not reviewed the previous video on trinomials, when a is equal to 1 or a equals not to 1, and that's under the factorization method of solving quadratic equation, please go back and look at it. So this is going to be minus x squared. Then you're going to substitute 3 and minus 1 for 2x. Will become plus 3x minus x plus 3. That will be equal to what? 0. You find the common factors here. So x is common here, and that'll give you minus x plus 3. And also 1 is common here, and that also give you minus x plus 3. Also, I told you that when you're solving this question, make sure, it's very important that the two brackets have to be the same thing. So you're going to have x plus 1, and you're going to have minus x plus 3 equal to what? 0. Then therefore, x plus 1 is equal to 0, minus x plus 3 is equal to 0. Take 1 to the other side, so you have x will be equal to minus 1. Take x to the other side, you're going to have x is equal to what? 3. All right. So I also told you that you don't, for x-intercept, you write x-intercept as x comma what? 0. Okay? So that means we're going to write this as minus 1 comma 0 for the first one. I'm going to write this as 3 comma 0 for the second one. So we've gotten the x-intercept for this point. So the next one, we're going to have step 4. Now, step 4 is that we're going to have under the y-intercept. So at y-intercept, so if you go to step 4, we're told that we need to find the y-intercept, okay? So we're going to have the y-intercept. So at y-intercept, we know that what? X is equal to 0. So that means basically what we're going to do, anywhere we see x, we're going to substitute it with what? 0. So we're going to have y is equal to minus x squared plus 2x plus 3. Then y will be equal to minus 0 squared plus 2, 0 plus what? 3. So therefore, y is going to be equal to 3. Similarly, I told you for y-intercept, you have to put it in the form of 0 comma y. So that means this is going to give us 0 comma what? 3. Okay? And that will be the y-intercept. The next one, after the y-intercept, step 5 is that we have to then find for what? Find for the vertex. And you can either use the formula method or complete the square method, but I'm going to use the complete the square method here. All right? So step 5, let's go. So we have y is equal to minus x squared plus 2x plus 3, okay? So I'm going to solve this in the other whiteboard, next whiteboard, so that will be very clear and easy. So having minus x squared plus 2x plus 3. So remember, in completing the square method, I gave you two methods. I said when a is equal to 1 and when a is not equal to 1. So you can see in this question, our a is not equal to 1. So we're going to use the other method. And when I told you in the other method, the first thing you do, you have to factorize. You bring out the minus. And you have x squared minus 2x plus 3. Then the value here, you have to then apply completing the square method. So we're having x squared minus 2x. Then the c is what? 0. You open a bracket, you put the x, and you put squared. The sign here, you write it down here. 2 divided by 2 will give you 1 minus 1 squared plus 0. And that will give you x minus 1 squared minus 1. So you put it back into this equation. So you substitute this x squared minus 2x with x minus 1 squared minus 1. So it's going to give you x minus 1 squared minus 1 plus 3. You open the bracket, it's going to give you minus x minus 1 squared. Minus times minus will give you plus 1 plus 3. Okay? Then 1 plus 3 will give you 4. So it's going to be 1 minus 1 squared plus 4. And remember, for the vertex, I told you the x for the vertex, you have to change the sign. So minus 1 will become 1, and the y will become what? 4. So the vertex for this now will be 1 comma what? 4. So the vertex for this question is 1 comma what? 4. Now we're done. We need to sketch the graph. That's step 6. So I'm going to write it here. So let me just bring all the points we have. We have the x-intercept to be minus 1, 0, and 3 and 0. So I'm going to write it here. So we have the x-intercept. We have the x-intercept to be minus 1, 0, and what? 3, and 0. If you look at it back, let's go back and be sure. Minus 1, 0, 3, and 0. We have the y-intercept to be 0 and 3. So the y-intercept, okay, is what? 0 and what? 3. And also, we have the vertex, which was step 5. The vertex, which was the vertex, okay? The vertex was 1 and 4. The vertex was what? 1 and 4. All right, so we've done that. So let's sketch it now. So I'm going to draw a graph, okay? So we have, let's say this is 1, 2, 3, 4. And we have -1, -2, -3, okay? And the y, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Are you seeing it? So we'll have to do this. Maybe we'll have, let's add 5 here. So this is the y, and this is the what? The x. So let's go. So we're going to start with the first one. The x-intercept is -1 and 0. So we have it here. It's -1 and 0. 3 and 0. 3 and 0. We have this here. The y-intercept is 0 and 3. 0 and 3. We have this here. The vertex, x is 1. Y is what? 4. We have that here. So like I told you, you're not going to draw a line like this. Nope. It has to be a smooth line. And you're not going to draw a very pointy line like this. No. It has to be a smooth curve. Is that okay? So we're going to do this together. So it's a freehand. You can draw this, join that, turn all the way up, come all the way down till you get to this point, and that is the curve for that equation. And as you can see, that the curve also fits what we were expecting. Oh, sorry, it's meant to be wider. Wider, it should be in the other way, not this way. Right. Sorry, I didn't see this mistake. So the other way, it should be this way. Okay, it should be wider that way. Okay, my apologies for that. So it should be wider like this. All right. So you can see that it follows the curve that we're expecting. It's very well, it's N-shaped. And when you look at the graph we just drew, it's also what? N-shaped. All right, okay, that was a long video because I had to go slowly so that you can understand how to what? Sketch a graph, okay? How to sketch a graph. So the first thing, you have to know the shape of the graph, the size of the graph, the x-intercept, the y-intercept, and the vertex. And if you have any questions, feel free to send me a message and I'll get back to you. And also, if you've not subscribed, please do so that you can also get to know, especially when you click the notification bell, you get a notification when I upload new videos. The next video I'm going to talk about the quadratic simultaneous equation. So this is a case where we're having both a linear equation and a quadratic equation, or we have two quadratic equations together. Is that okay? All right. Okay, thank you very much. And I will see you in the next video where we're going to talk about quadratic simultaneous equations.